Good evening, friends. Welcome to this edition of the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting here at Field in Maine. It's the third Thursday of the month, which means it's time to try some wine. Ooh, we have a little white this evening, and it's got an interesting little hue to it. Who's joining? If you're with us this evening, please let us know and chime in, tell me who's here. We'll pick up our process of tasting through these wines. It's been a wonderful wine day. Thursdays are the wine days. Hi, Kathy. Good evening to you. Wow. It's very expressive. So we've got a bunch of wine type things happening around here, which is fun, and certainly some food type things too. As is always the case, this is a busy time of year. As the produce starts to come in, the farmers markets are up and running. We've got a tremendous farmers market in the Warrenton farmers market and also at the Plains market. And it's just been, constant now new things coming out. And as a result, a desire to be more creative with the menu, and things are changing. We've got a strawberry gazpacho on the present menu this evening. It just makes you happy. So wonderful to see strawberries up, and asparagus just doing wonderful, and carrots everywhere, and carrot tops doing fantastic things. So it's fantastic, just all around fun. Trish and Andy and Kathy are with us this evening. Hello, hello. Kristen and Johnny and Taylor, good evening to you, and Greg, to you as well. Happy to have you with us. We don't do much white. We have found that whites are not quite the same draw for people. So red is the case. I mean, that generally is how the wine list shakes out, and our wine sales follow too. This is about, roughly speaking, 2/3 red or more, and 1/3 or less is white by way of our wine sales and in our composition of our wine. And that kind of follows or tracks how we do this too, as 12 wines a year, 4 or so are white. And this is one of them this evening. So Jeannie, Flynn Patrick is with us this evening. Sarah, hello from Pennsylvania. Fantastic. Kathy Lane Wiedemann, good evening to you. Veronica Myers with Dan hanging out. Thank you, guys. Oh, Bill and Bonnie, how are you guys? Wonderful to have you with us tonight, too. And Robert Haynes, David Pearson, and Allison is at a birthday dinner. David, you can manage solo. This is a good activity. We'll babysit you of sorts, We'll chaperone you through this evening. Dave and Julie are up in Pennsylvania. That's amazing. I love how this wine sometimes gets to travel with our guests and go places. And I was talking to a couple of guests who were saying, "Oh, we're going to be out of town." So we'll just take the wine with you. You can take it. Everybody else has managed to do that and find their way. It was pretty cool. So Terry, hello. Glad to have you with us this evening. And Sean and Sam, you are back with this little white number. Very cool. So whites and reds, we go through the same process of blind tasting. We use the same methodology, the deductive process of trying to weed out what it isn't first, and then arrive at what it might be, and then narrow that down to try to figure out exactly what it is. Whites often present a whole different challenge relative to reds. You don't get as much color variation, and so you focus on different things. Oftentimes they're a little more aromatically expressive, and there's more tells in white wines. Certain varietals, think of, say, Riesling, for example, which will have sort of that petroleum note sometimes, that lychee quality, some tropical notes. Those are more signature and identifiable. If you get that sort of honeysuckle, honeyed aroma, apricot note, you might be talking about Viognier. Whereas reds, there are a lot of reds that have sort of very similar profiles and not quite the signature tell. A few of them do, of course. So whites offer the opportunity sometimes to kind of be able to really either key in on something specific because it's showcasing that, or to rule out something that is specific because it's not present in the glass there. And so we're going to play that way. Dean and Bobbin are here tonight. Long, slow legs. Kristen's getting me back on track, which is great. Chris and Courtney, hello. Good evening. Smoky, cool. All right, let's get there. So let's go visual first, and then we'll go into the aromatics, which I know a number of you already are way ahead of me, which is good. So when you're looking at this wine, what do you see? As you look at the color, it's clear, it's not bubbling, it's white, so it's not necessarily a red grape, although today I had a chance to try white Pinot Noir, which was very interesting. It's an interesting wine, not great, but interesting. So it could be a white grape, and to make that note more clear, right, the juice that runs from grapes is clear, except for a couple of cases. It makes a red wine is made by way of its contact with that juice and the skin. And so this is more likely than not just a white varietal, a white-skinned grape. And as a result, we've got the resulting juice and no skin contact. So we already know that it's a white wine, we think, and so we know it's a white wine. What else do we know about it by way of looking at it? As you swirl it, I heard someone say, Kristen said, long, slow legs, right? So you swirl, the rim kind of creates around the outside of the glass, and then you have the formation of tears as they cry their way down, and then they either stay or they don't. But if they stay, you've got legs. And if the legs are there, do they form slowly by way of tears or quickly? Do the tears hold or do they dissipate? Or do they sheet down more like water? All of this asking questions, kind of driving at trying to figure out where this might be coming from in the world. That viscosity, the formation of those tears, the speed with which they drop, and the way in which they linger as legs are indications of an amount of alcohol in the wine, an amount of sugar that were in the grapes that were vinified to make alcohol that could be still in this wine by way of residual sugar or potentially as alcohol. And as a result, we're looking at this, and it's forming slowly and dropping slowly. I mean, my hands my fingers tracking and then going down and then maintaining. That's an indication that we're talking about a warmer climate. Warmer climate because the warmth offers the grapes the greater opportunity to gain more sugar and ripeness, and that more sugar and ripeness relates then to the potentially higher alcohol. So we should be expecting, just by the visual, a wine that has a little bit more richness and character, a fuller-bodied wine. In the analogy of milk, we're not looking at skim milk or 2% milk, we're looking probably more at whole milk. We'll verify that as we taste it and see what it's like on the palate, but that's my expectation based on just the visual there. Pale yellow, yeah, there is color variation in wine, right? And in white wine, I should say. You might have sort of almost a green tinge to a almost watery color, and think about that in context of, say, Sauvignon Blanc or Vino Verde, all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum where you might have an amber-colored kind of sugar-sweet, late-harvested and aged wine. It could be copper in color. You see kind of a golden hue from something like barrel-fermented and aged Chardonnay. This has a bit of that pale element, pale yellow. It's got a little bit of a golden fleck to it. So yeah, this has a richer profile by way of the tears and legs. It has some color richness, so it's coming perhaps from a warmer spot. Beautiful. So I saw a note for smoky. That's an aroma. Let's smell this wine and head that way. Rick offered the smoky comment, more smoky question. Is it a smoky profile? We're always looking for a few things: fruit, earth, and wood as you're smelling, and then we'll do the same thing as we're tasting. Do you smell something fruity? And a whole panoply of fruits, and so the whole spectrum from citrus to stone fruits to berry fruits to tree fruits and on and on. And then what's the character of that fruit? So let's smell this wine and tell me what you smell from the way of fruit. And then we'll talk about earth and whether there's any oak or wood signatures here as well. Lovely. It's a pretty nose, isn't it? This is a nice wine. It has a freshness to it and also kind of a ripe yellow apple. Taylor's picking up a bready aroma, so a yeasty quality there. Citrus and floral, yes. An echoed yeastiness, yep. Gooseberries. Kind of also boxwood or, kind of that element. So going back to the earlier comment about sometimes white wines give you a full tell, if you smell gooseberries, typically you have to at least say Sauvignon Blanc, because they're oftentimes found in New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc in particular, but it can be in other grapes presentation as well. Tropical fruit, ML perhaps. Yeah, Bill, I mean, there's definitely a richness there, and that yeastiness suggests that we might be dealing with some of that more advanced kind of quality. Maybe there's a little bit of lees stirring, so lees aging. gives another richness to the wine and might be some of the autolytic or bready or yeasty quality that's there. Tropical fruit. Yeah, I'm not getting as much of that yet. No, yeah, like banana chips and things of that sort. It's starting to come out. I get that yellow apple, golden delicious kind of quality. And on the earth side, you could have minerality. You have crushed rocks. You have deep forest floor richness. You have pininess. You have wet rain on rocks, basement kind of smells. Anything like that coming through? Slate, things of that sort. Greg, I agree. There's not a huge pronounced quality of kind of alcohol here. It doesn't seem super boozy. I mean, I think it has a weightiness to it, and the esters, the aroma from the alcohol is definitely traveling up through the glass, but it's not so powerful there. Yeah. Kristen, yes, whetstone. I get a little bit of that, like a little bit of a mineral quality. Sometimes you get sea spray, kind of a saltiness. It's not hugely expressive, but it's present. So like if we were asking, is this extremely expressive, is this moderately expressive, or just kind of shut down, it's more in the moderate realm, right? It's not as varietally identifiable by way of its aroma as, say, Gewürztraminer might be, where you'd get like rose petals and it would explode out of the glass in just this incredibly aromatic varietal. So I don't think we're talking about, I think what we've described so far, if we said, like, I think it's Gewürztraminer, we'd be off track. Or Torrontés from Argentina, it's off track for us to say something like that. But the varietals, it might be richer, robust, some apple element. It has some of that tropical quality. It has that yeastiness. So maybe we're talking about what, like Chenin Blanc. Chardonnay you can always throw in because you can't rule that out until you get to the end, I think, basically, because it can be tart green apple and it can also be super tropical profile. And so it always helps to have that. And we haven't talked about wood yet. And if you're talking about wood, you always kind of throw that in there. It could be Rhone varietal, more southern Rhone kind of, not sort of Viognier expression, but more Roussanne, Marsanne, Grenache, something like that. A blend, perhaps. We'll get to that too as we taste this wine and see, is it a single instrument playing, or is it a quartet or trio kind of playing together? Is there dimension that we can't explain by way of one varietal? So we'll happen to kind of answer that question as we get to tasting. From the rest of the nose, though, from the few acronym, fruit, earth, a little bit of that mineral, a little bit of the apple, some of the tropical fruits, some yeastiness. How about the wood? Do you smell spices? Do you get cedar? Do you get kind of a roasted corn element? Any buttered elements that come through? Yeah, pineapple's coming out a little bit, Kristen. The tropical's coming on now for me, in that sort of dried banana, some hint of pineapple. It's dried. It's not fresh. So that's kind of linking that dried component. It's not juicy aroma of that fruit. It's kind of taking me somewhere then it would be hot, where that fruit expression would desiccate a little bit, as opposed to it just being fresher, more vibrant. I'm curious to see what the acidity on this is. That's a big tell and a helpful tell with respect to white wines too. For example, if you had high acidity, you wouldn't be talking about, say, Viognier. So we'll get there. I get a little bit of spice, not a ton. It's like nuanced mace, a bit. I don't think it's the most prominent note, but it's hanging out there. So some neutral oak, perhaps. Maybe 1 in 5 barrels is new or newer. Just a kind of consistent barrel maintenance program, as opposed to the intention of new oak being put on this wine. So I think the barrel is a vessel to age it. It seems like it has some richness and some color, which might have seen some kind of wood aging or wood elevage. And so that, for me, I think there's enough indication on the nose and even the visual to make a suggestion that we're headed with some kind of oak element. And so in that regard, right, saying, I think I perceive a little bit of oak, and then saying, yeah, I got gooseberry, so this is New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc would typically be made in Sauvignon and stainless steel, and so those two things don't match. The malolactic, I don't know, Greg, yet. I mean, not fully. We'll know more as we get to the palate. And the bready, kind of yeasty element could be lees, could be a little bit of malolactic, perhaps. We'll see. And then the neutral oak bill, I think, yeah, I agree. I think that's maybe neutral to partial. Let's taste the wine. Just got a little bit of cinnamon. Ooh, a little Gruner from Odium. Neat, Veronica, that's a cool call. So Gruner, like we would be looking for that kind of radish, white pepper. Gruner is a challenging grape in the blind tasting context. Like Gruner and Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc and Albarino, they all kind of mess with each other. Pinot Blanc steps out a little bit more on the lemon side, but it's difficult to parse them out and difficult from place to place. And so, Debbie, good evening. Welcome. As you're doing your first taste, woo, zing. As you're doing your first taste, oh, tons of acidity, right? That same impact for everybody else as much as it has been for me. Oh, that's a great, just as tasty as it was last week. But you didn't maintain it open. You just got another bottle, I hope, because I don't think it would last. But you opened the wrong mystery one. Oh, that stinks. Flinty, Greg, great call there. So again, looking for fruit, earth, and wood in terms of what's on your palate. But before we jump to that, talk about the mechanics, kind of the structure of the wine. Is it a light, medium, or robust wine? Is it medium to high acid, as I've already indicated? What's the alcohol like? Is it pretty warm and hot? Is the texture of the wine richer as a result? Do you get any oak elements here? Boom. Flinty, nice descriptor too. Kind of reminds you, Sarah, of Roussan. Tell me a little bit more about what that means for you. Oh, very well played. Kristen, they opened the wrong wine, but in perfect form, did not actually unveil the wine, just drank the rest of the bottle. Smart move, pro move. And so you can still play along this month without necessarily knowing what the wine is, but having had a trial run at drinking the bottle, which is great. So on the fruit side, do you pick up any? Wow. Whew. Oh, Tapas Creek. Tapas Creek makes wonderful wine. Man, it's a great spot. For those of you who don't know Tapas Creek, it's in California in Paso Robles, and began by the Perrin family and the Haas family, who are their importer. Perrin family makes wonderful wines in Chateau Beaucastel in the Rhone, and brought over vines to propagate a nursery. The nursery then propagates vineyards, and Tapas Creek just makes really great Rhone-style wines in California. Roussan can have a nuttiness to it, can have texture. Generally, I don't find that it has this much acidity, but doesn't mean this couldn't have a little bit of its sometimes partner Marsanne in it, sometimes partner, kind of adjacent cousin, if you will, Grenache Blanc in it, and that could be kind of neat. So, you have all that texture and weight on the visual in the legs and the tiers, and you have texture in the mouth up front, and then it just sort of explodes out of the back end of it and has just all kinds of vibrant acidity. Not much really in the way of fruit, right? Greg, my mouth is still watering. It's like it's almost challenging to chat. Yeah, Veronica, I'm with you on a Roussan blend. Medium plus high acid, yeah, absolutely, Dean and Bobbin. The peppery taste, yeah, okay. Peppery taste kind of goes back to Gruner. So see, this is how this works. We're chipping away and ruling things out and then sort of building a profile. And you just put a pin in an idea. Like, you don't have to be like, is it Gruner Veltliner? Yes or no? No, you don't have to know that yet. You should say, it might be. It might be Gruner Veltliner. It might be Roussan or Roussan blend. Very cool. I don't think it's Gewürztraminer. I don't think it's Torrontés. I don't think it's and so you can move away from some things. It's between 2% and whole milk. I agree, Kristen. It's whole milk up front and whole milk in appearance, and then it kind of just tapers into this racy 2% milk kind of expression toward the back. I'm going to have another sip now. I'm trying to see whether it's really the acidity that's kind of masking the actual texture of the wine, or whether it really just does sort of taper into a medium kind of weight. Modern grape from the New World. Bill, what are you thinking? What's an example of a modern grape from the New World? Cooler climate. Yeah, Greg, the argument for the acid is more cooler climate and orientation. We could be in a warm site in a cool climate. We could be in a cool site in a warm climate. For example, if you're in the Rhone, we're talking about the Roussanne blend. You could be in California with a Roussanne blend, and you just got an early pick on some of the fruit. You get something like that. You have maybe a cooler site that had a warm vintage, and you get some of that expression, the density and the weight. It's not terribly fruited, right? We're getting little tropical elements, but it's not massively fruited. So Roussanne's not a terribly fruity wine. Marsanne Roussanne kind of blend, good that way. Grenache Blanc can have a whole spectrum of flavor. Grenache Blanc's one of those grapes. Grenache in general, the Blanc and the Rouge or the Negro are challenging to understand because they have just the ability to really change a lot. There's a vast spectrum of their flavor profiles, and we've been dealing with trying to figure out those more and more. Greg, I wanted to note that it could be Chenin Blanc too. There's that apple element, high acid. Whenever there's really high acid and there's texture, you got to think about Chenin Blanc. High acid and some texture potentially could be Riesling. I just don't think this is presenting in a Riesling way. Remind you of, yeah, gotcha. Bill, good idea. Okay, thank you for offering the Chardonnay as a modern grape. Yeah. This would be more textured than some Chardonnay, but the acidity is there. So I roll my eyes up and try to search the Rolodex of memory on the few Chardonnays that I've gotten a chance primarily to try because of the Loudoun County Wine Competition and great Loudoun growers. Bill being the head of the Loudoun Wine Growers Association. New World Rhone blend, Julie, yeah, that's a cool idea. I mean, I think that's something we should certainly consider. So, Roussanne, Marsanne, Grenache Blanc, Picpoul. You could have Claret in there. There's a whole host of. You could have Viognier in there too, but I'm not getting any aromatics from that. But the Marsanne Roussanne blend from Calic Wine Club, cool. All right, so a lot of us are thinking maybe that Rhone blend has an opportunity here, and blend. Because why? Right? Sometimes it's really clear where you're just drinking Sauvignon Blanc and it's that grassiness, a little bit of that gooseberry, some lime, and precise mineral kind of things. And there's not a lot of other things. It's clear that's kind of the variety that's speaking. And sometimes you get richness and high acidity and ripeness and a leaner profile toward the finish. And how are those things possible with one grape and one harvest? Well, the answer might be they're not. So those things become possible because you have a blend of fruit, 1, 2, 3, 4 different varietals. Perhaps it's one varietal, though, picked from different spots. We were fortunate to visit with last night Chris from Rimhoekte in South Africa, and his vineyard has all expositions. So all kinds of exposure, where most places are, they plant the vineyard southeast facing in the northern hemisphere. For him, he has north-facing vineyards, he has south-facing vineyards, east and west. And when he makes a blend, he has the choice of blending all of that together to create a really dynamic wine that is from one place, from one varietal potentially. And he likes to work with Chenin Blanc, for example. And that gives you really kind of a unique presentation. Because you have a variety and a dimension of flavors that aren't responsible from one aspect from one grape. So, yeah, I think Chenin Blanc should be in the mix. I'm not sure about Grüner Veltliner. I think that apple element is coming on more. I think that slight tropical qualities there. I don't think that would be Gruner necessarily. So Gruner had a good run for me, but I'm going to venture away from it. The Rhone blend I like still very much too. Yep, Greg, you're correct. They used to call it Steen. Steen. Stin. It seemed, I think that's how he pronounced it yesterday. They're now more just calling it Chenin Blanc. And Stin in particular was about a dry version of Chenin Blanc. And man, he makes some lovely ones. Chris did yesterday. He had 3 different expressions of Chenin Blanc. He'd made a Chenin Blanc, which he called First Light, but actually was the second pick. They were the interior grapes that were covered by the exterior bunches and by a little bit of canopy, and so they didn't ripen as fast or as much. So he picked the outer canopy, which got sun exposure, and he makes that wine a wine called Honey Bunch, which is just delicious, with about 12 hours of skin contact. It gets kind of golden in color. Then he makes First Light from the interior bunches, and it's brighter, more vibrant. There's a little bit almost greenness to it. The greenness, though, results in just tart, bright, lively, lifted acidity as opposed to an actual green flavor. And then he makes another wine from the Honey Bunch set, but ages it on the skins for a period of time and gives it an orange kind of presentation. So kind of neat. Sorry, back and forth. Marsanne, Roussanne, sort of Rhone blend, and Chenin Blanc. So how do we figure that out? And then where do we place ourselves? Old world, new world. New world was thought of sort of California kind of Rhone blend, so some of that ripeness would be well explained by a California expression of a Rhone sequence of varietals, a Rhone blend. South African Chenin Blanc, absolutely. Doesn't present necessarily in a way that I would think about kind of France, and I'm not getting that lanolin kind of waxy quality that you oftentimes get from Sauvignon Blanc, or from Chenin Blanc, in France. So for that reason, I could place it in maybe Australia. South Africa. But some of that tropical note, I don't know that it's Chenin Blanc. So I think I'm more on the Rhone blend kick. And I like the idea of a Central Coast Rhone blend. I don't think this is an actual Rhone blend. I don't think this presents the same way as something that we'd be drinking from the southern part of France. But there's some fresh, kind of juicy yellow apple, and then some of that tropical fruit, which seems more signature to California for me. So I'm comfortable kind of planting a flag. White Rhone blend, I think there's going to be some Grenache in here. I think that acidity, or claret, something like that has high acidity. Roussanne and Marsanne, the Marsanne might be giving it some of that high acidity, but it's got a really persistent acidity, which is lovely. So what about age? It's not presenting like a real dark color, suggesting prolonged aging. I think we're in the fresher realm. Yep, household split over wine, but at least brought back together to drink the same wine. So Roussanne for Veronica and Dan with the Chenin Blanc call. The citrus part, yeah, for sure is there. That lemony quality, like oftentimes it's more preserved lemon, kind of a salty lemon element for me, and I'm not picking that up. So I'm going more of the Rhone side. All right, so on the age, if I am anyway, gonna plant my flag into a white Rhone blend from the Central Coast of California, newer vintage, 2021. So newer. Kathy Colombard, that's an interesting call. I think the texture is maybe a little bit richer than Colombard, but the acidity's there. Sonoma 2021, cool. So 2 years old, 2 to 4 years old. And cheers to the date nights for all of you, that's great. I appreciate that very much. It's a really fun activity. Wine's more fun shared, I think, and sharing it with someone you care much about, care a great deal about, is even better. So, yeah. Oh, fun wine trivia. Thank you, Kathy. Gruner is a parent of Colombard. I didn't know that. That's great. All right, I'm gonna stick there, I think, and at 32, it's 30 minutes of this. Oh, shouldn't. Excuse me. Eldorado Blanc. Grenache Blanc. Oh, cool. 2021, so we nailed the vintage. Skinner. Neat. Oh, that's a very cool wine. So we're talking about Central Valley, kind of the Sierra foothills, right? Eldorado, up in California. So, ooh, this has got 12.8% alcohol. So it's not huge, right? And you've got Central Valley, so you've got warmth, but you've got foothill mountains, so you've got cool. You get Grenache Blanc, giving you that texture and tons of acidity. This is a really neat wine. Cool label too, huh? It's a very cool label. For Dean and Bobbin, there's that. Yeah, the bottle shape doesn't help in this either. Like, you know, in the white wine world, certainly Gruner Veltliner would have a tall bottle, probably. Tall, slender bottle. Riesling would probably have the same kind of situation. You can tell from that. Yeah, Greg, man, some fish would be great. We've got like the first English peas from Nancy's Produce at the farmer's market in the Plains on Sunday, and they're going with some scallops this evening. This would be fun there for sure. Oh man, got some soft shell crabs on the menu too, with kind of a little pimenton coulis. This might hang with that. That would be really neat. So whatever you have with it, I think it'll be tasty. It's kind of, you know, 73 degrees, May evening, perfect sunny kind of day. I don't think there's a better kind of day out there in the world. And Virginia specializes with those in May, and it's a special time of year. So if you can, take it outside for the remainder of it and toast the beauty of the evening, ideally with the one you care about most. And we'll see you back here in June to do this again, and hopefully sooner for a number of you. This upcoming wine dinner I just mentioned, we had one last night. We'll have another one in June, which will be fun. It'll be focusing on California, actually, and on producers who are, for lack of a better way of saying it, kind of the cool producers. And I don't mean necessarily, some of them are cool, trendy cool, but they're more about cool climate exposure and cool climate expression of their grapes. And so producers like Matthiasen, for example, we're making some really interesting wines from around California. We're going to be able to taste about 6 or 7 different producers as Rob McFarlane joins us. He's one of our distributors and really has been all over the wine world for decades now, and is a great personality who I think you'll have fun with. This is the 21st, I think, the third Wednesday in June. So if you're around and able to join us, we're going to sit down with a whole host of different wines first for a seminar, and then we're going to enjoy some Matthiasen wines for dinner. A fantastic sort of summer meal. So cheers to all of you. Thank you for joining. I'm going to finish that one. Until next time, thank you.